Hello and welcome to the Madhouse. This is Mass Effect Andromeda group therapy, discussion, eulogy, just general rant at times. We're going to be looking over Mass Effect Andromeda, a series very near and dear to our hearts, and the game that kind of made us not feel great about that. I'm James. With me is Jack
Hello.
and Benji.
Hi, welcome to I Digress, a Silver Crow Media podcast.
So Benji, you've never played Mass Effect Andromeda, have you?
I've not played Mass Effect Andromeda. I tried to play earlier today, but I didn't get any further than the character creator due to graphics issues.
Have you played any other Mass Effect?
I played the entire trilogy last year, or the year before.
Cool. And Jack?
Yeah, I've played Andromeda. I've also devoted a lot of time to the original trilogy. I think I've played Mass Effect 2 something like 6 times at this stage, and less so on 1 and 3, but I put a lot of time into 3's multiplayer. I'm a fan, let's put it like that. I'm a fan of the franchise, a big fan of the series.
So what you'd say is you have a pretty good familiarity with Mass Effect.
Yeah.
So you think you could, recount Mass Effect Andromeda's plot for me?
Right. Okay, so it all starts out, you're sent off to the Andromeda Galaxy to try and set up a new life for the Milky Way species. You get there, and I think the idea was that all the ships are supposed to group up with the Nexus, which is like the core ship, and then there's the sort of colony ships. And the human colony ship, everyone starts to wake up, and it's like, whoa, something's gone wrong. I think they fly into these tentacle things that damage everything, which everyone's like, that's not supposed to be there. And the planet that they were supposed to land on, the human colony planet that was supposed to be like the new Earth, is really fucked up by these crazy space tentacles which are like destroying everything, and that's not good. In the first sort of 10 minutes, the human leader, their pathfinder, dies, and rather than letting chain of command dictate who comes next as it was supposed to be, it just falls to the shoulders of one of their children, which they decide in their infinite wisdom is who's going to be the new leader of the human race. And you play as that child. It can either be the daughter or the son. So that's like the very first sort of, 45 minutes to an hour or so. Oh yeah, you also run into some bad guys and no one knows who they are. They turn out to be the Ket later on. But basically what then ensues is the humans linking up with the Nexus, who say, wow, you guys are late. We've been like here with no support for like a year or something. I think it's like a year. And there's been like a whole revolution on the Nexus, and a whole bunch of people got exiled because they were trying to overthrow the powers that be. So that things aren't great on the Nexus, but the humans finally showing up, that's a good thing. And so the human Pathfinder is then kind of tasked with going and finding the other ships. What then ensues is basically a fairly open-ended plot of Ryder, the human Pathfinder, leading a small kind of exploration ship to various planets and setting up colonies, and throughout that process they butt heads more with the Ket, this race who are kind of here and seem to be very sort of imperialistic and overpowering and aggressive. And they also run into another species which I've completely forgotten the name of, who are like native to this system, and they've been kind of subjugated by the Ket. They've been like beaten down by them for years and years and years now. But they kind of join forces with the Citadel races. I think they did in my playthrough. I'm not sure if that's the way.
Angara.
Yes, Angara.
The thing that I find interesting about that plot, I know you're not finished, but just quickly point out, they immediately discount the sort of pioneer vibe.
Yeah.
Like it goes from, oh, we're the first to set foot on this ground. Very quickly it goes to, oh no, a bunch of people already here, and it turns you into a settler. Which is a compelling game, but it's I guess, different to advertised. Like, it's a different vibe, you know?
That's certainly what jarred with me when we had that very first Johnny Cash E3 trailer. My God, I was excited by that. I was still excited, to be fair, when they had that Rag and Bone Man one as well, but okay, we'll get on to that in a minute. I need to finish the plot. So, the Ket have been subjugating everyone. So, yeah, like you said, it turns out you are a settler. The Ket are here and the Angara are here. But there's also these kind of, I think they're called the Remnant, which are like an old, very technological civilization of sorts. They're all robots and potentially AI and stuff. And they feel significant, and only later on in the game, now here come the really big plot spoilers, it all kind of culminates where, mid-game you discover that actually the Ket are Angara, but they're all like these kind of transformed Angara, just like the Reapers were doing to people.
Some of them are?
Well, yeah, some of them are, because it also can happen to other species and they get turned into different kind of Ket. But then there's other Ket who are like before that kind of Ket, like the big dogs who are...
Yeah, like there were Ket, and then they made more Ket from other species.
Yeah, similar
and
to
it's
the Reapers,
not
basically.
clear which are like pure blood and which are like... So they're kind of just like an amalgamation. I think they mentioned somewhere that the Ket look the way they do now because they've almost like taken genes that they like and sort of discarded the ones they don't.
Their whole purpose is like the betterment of their species to create the perfect race and populate the entire universe with it or something. So they've been doing that, and it turns out that the Angara were like almost a perfect species or something created by this remnant, by like really, really ancient beings.
Wait, hang on, the Angara were created by the remnant?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I might have been in a haze when that was revealed.
It was so boring when it was revealed, James. It was right before, I think, Sam gets taken away from you.
No, I remember, yeah. What the hell?
That is an actual plot point that happened. Anyway, turns out the Angara, and they have a bit of a crisis because they're like, we're not actually like a real species, we got created. It kind of ends with this big showdown with the Ket because they're trying to get into some remnant device.
They're chasing the Meridian.
The Meridian,
which controls all vaults and all the worlds connected. And the Ket want Meridian
because they want to control the vaults. They want to have like power over this universe, I suppose. It's not... Well, maybe it was clearly explained exactly what the Ket want to do, but it wasn't something... Well, it's definitely not something I remember. And it kind of culminates in you defeating the Ket, killing their sort of overlord, and then it's just like, well, now we rebuild. We get together with these Angara, we settle the worlds, and we move on from here. And then we won't because they've canned Mass Effect now, so...
Yeah. Does that kind of imply that, like, say they do a new Mass Effect game and it's set back in the Milky Way, does it kind of assume that, like, somewhere out there, the Andromeda... Like, it's still canon? All those people are just still kind of, like, toiling away and everyone just kind of forgot about them.
But the space travel to Andromeda took something like 700 years, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, they were all in cryosleep, so... The events of Andromeda are happening hundreds of years after everything that happens in Mass Effect. You still with us, Benji?
Yeah.
Good.
Sorry, I just had a look at my thing. I was like, my God, we've been talking about the plot for 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's kind of... I think the problem with the plot is it's like every open world RPG, it does have this problem of describing the plot is basically impossible because they're like, 30 hours at a minimum?
Something like that, yeah.
I loved Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. I couldn't tell you the plot other than the sort of overarching, the collectors are bad and we
disagree.
don't know why.
I think the main story plot of the Mass Effect games was very simple. The first one is an upstart human captain comes face to face with an ancient evil. 2, ancient evils turns out to be more of a problem than everyone thought. And so you get into this, it's a life or death battle to keep it contained. Third game, you come up with the master way to destroy the evil, and you get the showdown with them.
I sort of agree with both of you to a degree, because all three games do have this kind of central plot which ties it together. And like James said, there is a problem with big open world games that they just get too sprawling and everything sort of unravels. Yeah. Mass Effect are on the better side of that, where they do manage to keep it quite tied together, I think, for the most part. But the way individual sequences play out, I mean, it's always going to be different for different people. So explaining the plot is, it's a bit of a misnomer because you might not even have Rex in 2 and 3 because you lost him in 1, that kind of thing.
It sort of diverts so much. And also I think, it's almost more of a problem of the Assassin's Creed games than at Mass Effect.
Yeah.
And in a way, I feel like Mass Effect Andromeda is more closer to the Assassin's Creed style of taking open world, like different worlds,
Yeah.
and then just filling them with stuff.
Yeah. And I'd say that's definitely a problem with later Assassin's Creed games in particular. Probably from 3 onwards. I think the ones before that were a bit tighter, a bit sort of everything was a little bit neater, more in the style of the original Mass Effect.
Especially the first one.
Yeah, well,
It was just go here, kill this person. Are you done? Okay, now kill this person. Now
But,
this one. Come on, keep going.
Assassin's Creed 2, very much story driven. The plot was very central to everything that happened, things like that. You could move between places, you could do side quests and stuff, but it was all building towards something much more central. Compared with 3, where you've got, I think, well, Connor just has multiple plots going on within Connor's like plot line, and then there's the whole thing with the homestead. You've got the ship, and Haytham is there, and it's just like it's.
Haytham, I think, really illustrates a problem that, like, those games both share a same problem with their story.
Okay.
Is Andromeda, a lot of the marketing in like the first 5 minutes or so of the game, it's all about Alec Ryder. And I don't know about you, but I loved Alec Ryder. He was such a cool character. So to get this moment where, spoiler alert, he kind of anticlimactically dies and makes you Pathfinder, it kind of felt like, oh, well, now I'm stuck with this person. And that's, you don't want to feel like you're stuck with the main character.
Yeah, it's funny that they both games, Assassin's Creed 3 and Mass Effect Andromeda, have that exact same problem.
Yeah. To take a sort of dramatic left turn, I wanted to try and like intersperse bits that we do like about this game, because it's not an awful game, you know. And I think the fact that it is so inconsistent, you can sort of see the potential, is why it's so interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about the art of the game, especially like the design of the different worlds and the planets. And personally, I adore it.
Well, that's actually one of the questions I have, having not played Andromeda, because one of the big things I really hated about the original Mass Effect games was the planets, not like the story relevant planets like the ice one where that big military facility is, or you know, the Citadel, but you know, when you got like the N7 missions or the Cerberus missions, and they were like, go to this planet in this system, and you go down in the Mako, and it's just like a really drab, dull planetscape with some hills and stuff. So is that improved upon in Andromeda? Are they actually planets you want to explore?
Very, very much so. And it's actually interesting that you brought that up, because the sort of focus around Andromeda was trying to take that exploration side from Mass Effect that got lost in 2 and 3 and turning that into its own game. And they nailed that, honestly. Yeah. Like all of the worlds are beautiful. Like, I especially love the desert planet, the first desert planet,
the first one, the radiation one.
Yeah. The problem is, like, they're really pretty, but because they don't have much in them, they are still kind of forgettable.
Yeah, that's right. I think part of the reason why the game felt a bit unpolished was the team was forced to use the Frostbite engine, which is not the best engine for RPGs. They had to create a lot of their own tools themselves. They had to put a lot of time into just getting the engine up to the standard that they wanted so that they could actually start making the game. So that set them back a good few months. But the benefit of the Frostbite engine is that everything is pretty gorgeous. It looks fantastic. The first time you step out onto a new world and you just take everything in, it's really... It's daunting in a sense, because it feels big just with you standing there. It feels like there's a lot here. You can look away into the distance, and the horizon just keeps going on and on and on. And for the most part, that will be an explorable area that you can't even see yet. So the art style for all the different planets was pretty much nailed. They each had their own kind of theme and feeling to them, and that carried across really, really well.
And I think that even boils down to like the character design. Like the Ket they have a really unique style that's like very different to what we see in a lot of other Mass Effect
Uh-huh.
things. They're kind of similar to the Batarians, but they've got almost like this crusty kind of shell on it.
Yeah.
But then they look a bit like apes because they've got like the way the shell sort of breaks on the face looks like how it does on apes with hair. Like, they clearly put a ton of work into getting this like gorgeous game.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
Another thing I really liked was there's one planet where you come across a stronghold which has been set up by a bunch of people who are kicked off the Nexus, and it's kind of cobbled together out of prefabs and bits of ship, and there's like banners and flags and things and wee shops. It's got a real kind of piratey vibe to it. And everything about it does convey that, like just the markings on the walls, the people milling about, the attitudes of all the inhabitants. The atmosphere is translated really, really well. And that happens a fair bit throughout the game where they've attempted to create an atmosphere, and it really does feel like that in-game.
yeah, it's this weird mix of like, you walk through a place and you really do get the sense of like, this is a place,
Yeah. Yeah.
But that then clashes with the sort of mechanics and those kind of that kind of clunkiness. So you get this weird, almost like uncanny valley, which I especially got on the Angara homeworld,
Okay.
where it's meant to be like a fairly big place you're in, but you can only explore quite a small place.
Yeah.
And it was quite a low frame rate on the Xbox One. I don't know what you played it on,
PC.
but it was low enough that it was almost like unbearable to be there. So you're just sprinting through, trying not to look, because if you look at the scenery, it makes the game lag more. So you had this weird sense of like, this is really pretty and I want to take it in, but also I'm gonna vomit, give me the next quest.
There's a very strange juxtaposition there between being on the first planet where you look up to the mountains and you think, I'm going to go there with my Nomad one day, I'm going to drive up that mountain and I'm going to see what it's like from the top, compared with the areas where it's like, right, you're only allowed to walk around here and there's a few doors you can go through, where you feel very much restricted, and it's a strange feeling of being completely at odds within the same game.
And it's weird because that was Mass Effect's openness. Like in all the other games, that's basically all you can do. It's just a series of corridors and rooms.
Yeah.
But it sold I think the other games sort of sell the setting a lot better of the actual places. I actually want to go to the exploration side, that sort of focus. In the best moments I had in the game, the moment when I would say Andromeda delivered on that core premise of like discovering a new world.
Yeah.
The game didn't plan for, so, which is a weird thing to say, but stick with me here. So, the first planet, the deserty one,
I believe it's Eos.
Eos, yeah.
Eos, yeah. I was driving around in a Nomad, really fun. We'll get to that. And I found this stronghold, like this Ket stronghold, and I was just like, I can't let this happen. There's got to be some loot at the end of this or something. And also from like a story perspective, they're quite near to my colony and there's a lot of them. I should take them out. So I had this amazing moment where I like stormed in my Nomad. It got stuck. I jumped out, sort of, get flung over from the thing. And I was playing basically a Vanguard. So it's like storming in with this really dramatic moment of like zipping around, taking them all out, wiped everyone out. And there wasn't anything I could do at the end. There's no loot or anything, because I wasn't meant to be there yet. There was a story mission that takes you there, and I hadn't triggered it. So I got to the end and then kind of had to gingerly walk back with my tail between my legs.
And when you got to the story mission, had it all reset?
I don't remember, but it definitely was a lot more like...
Scripted.
Oh, here we go. Okay, you're...
Because I know in some games, some open world games, there is that hilarious thing where you'll clear a place out that you're not meant to clear out until a story mission. You get there, and it doesn't reset the bad guys. Yeah. So you're like, whoops, this should have been a really tense fight in story terms, but I can just breeze through it.
Yeah.
I actually had a very similar experience in Justice Cause 3, which I think has a similar sort of reputation of, being a sequel to a beloved game that doesn't quite stick the landing in every area.
Mm.
There was, again, a giant stronghold, and the way the game developers thought, I'm going to stop you coming here, is if you come within a certain distance of the base, they are going to mortar nukes at you constantly until you're dead. So I was flying around using the incredible wingsuit, and I realised the mortars do friendly fire, and if I wingsuit quick enough, it doesn't hit me. So that started maybe half an hour of me wingsuiting around this enemy base, avoiding fire, keeping my speed up as much as possible, as they nuked their own base. And in Just Cause 3, unlike Just Cause 2, to 100% it, you just got to destroy everything. So I destroyed everything in the base by hitting it with their nukes. And then, very late in the game, a crucial story mission is literally like you're trying to rush this base. You're trying to take it. Like, you do a few missions beforehand to try and weaken the structure. And I get there, and there's no one except for my guys, and the mortars have been turned off. And someone even sacrifices themselves
Oh
to
no.
protect me to turn this place off. And it's like, I own the base. You just come into my house and
Oh
kill
dear.
yourself trying to get in the door.
Oh dear.
Like, and I think it's kind of it's a sort of similar vibe of like I think it's something that open world games have a great difficulty that linear games don't. Is you have to take into account that people are going to discover it early
Yeah.
and keep it interesting without breaking
Mm.
anything.
How
So yeah, Benji.
how limited is the exploration in Mass Effect Andromeda? Because for the people at home who might not have followed kind of the ups and downs of the development, originally it was going to be this amazing No Man's Sky-esque procedurally generated open world experience. That was what was going to be Mass Effect Andromeda. Then they realized they couldn't really do that on a Frostbite engine, and they didn't actually have like the money and resources at BioWare Edmonton to do that, so they limited it, and that's what caused them to have to play catch up in like 18 months. So, how limited is the exploration itself?
It's weirdly inconsistent. So there are a few planets where you're basically, I think the two desert ones, the ice one.
There's the one where
Yeah,
you
I
don't
think-
get the nomad, the jungly one.
Oh yeah, those ones where it's very open and you can go to a lot of places and sort of just stumble onto stuff. And then there are a few planets where you're basically just walking like down the equivalent of giant corridors. Like the one with the outpost, the like ramshackle stuff. It's got a lot of like canyons, and you can never go outside the canyon. So that feels much more like you're being funneled to go to specific places, which didn't quite work.
What I'd say for it is that I think EOS is definitely the strongest one because it seems to have tied in a lot of plot into it. Where there it's where you set up your first settlement and you have to do all this stuff to get ready for them, and you need to turn on the vault or something to like start to purify the area so that you can actually have a settlement there. And that process unlocks more of the map because there are areas you can't really go because the radiation is too high. But by preparing the land for settlers, you unlock a bit more, then you get to travel a bit further and so on. That only really happens on EOS. The other worlds don't really have that, and I'm especially thinking about the other desert one, which is it's very, very open, and I glitched it a bit because to set up a settlement you're supposed to have spoken to the Krogan who have settled there and also turned on the vault, and I hadn't been to the vault yet, but the Krogan were like, well, you turned on the vault and we'll let you have a settlement. I'm like, well, I haven't done that yet, but okay. It feels like it was a bit more lazy, a bit more sloppy.
Yeah.
It's still got the very vast kind of a lot to do kind of vibe to it, but it's not given to you as incrementally, so you can quite easily overstep.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
The ice planet felt very empty. It felt very much like you had a sort of empty, beautiful but empty map with a few pockets of stuff here and there.
Yeah, usually like quite closely clustered together anyway.
Yeah, and actually, that was the one other point where I felt a true sense of like wonder in the game. Is it's the first time I encountered those like remnant dragon thing,
Oh yeah, yeah,
which you touch on in the story.
yeah.
And again, there's a mission to kill one, but I discovered them before,
Hmm.
and I naturally got in my car and raced to try and kill it.
Yeah,
Because it's like, that's a huge enemy dragon.
yeah.
Of course I'm gonna kill it. And like Inquisition, it has giant dragons, and you go kill them. So I kind of had this sense of like, I'm gonna get some amazing loot from that. And I followed it around, sort of popping out when I got close to shoot at it. Had no health. There was no way you could like bring it down, because it was a mission to do that, and that kind of sucks. Like,
Yeah.
it feels weird that the core element that they were trying to tap into, this sort of Mass Effect story, but on a theme of discovery rather than almost like a war movie type thing.
So with
Um,
like accidentally coming across the cat stronghold or coming across the remnant dragon, would you have preferred something along the lines that Fallout does, where like you're told, oh, we need to go take out this cat stronghold, and you're right, like one of your dialogue options for your rider is just, oh, I've already done that.
yeah. I think in general, like personally, I would just like it to be more open, in the sense that like, you know, the second you get there, someone's like, oh yeah, there's a cat stronghold that's a threat, but you can sort of choose when to do it.
But that's at odds with
Um,
having a central plot, and this is kind of what Breath of the Wild suffers from. As soon as you drop into the
Yeah.
world, you can pretty much go and fight Ganon, but that's what you sacrifice for plot, with having something central that drives it. So you can have one or the other, really. I don't think anyone has quite managed to give you something that's completely open and really expansive and very player-driven, but also
Yeah,
has something that ties it together nicely.
I'd say Fallout 3 does, because there is a very driven central plot of you tracking down your father, and there are like places you can go anywhere, but you can't track down your father unless you speak to very specific people.
I think it's just kind of a problem endemic to open world, is you need to let the player explore if you want it to be open, but a good story will probably have a reason why that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, if it's all the Fallout games, it's like, you need to go find this person, especially Fallout 4, where it's like, you need to go find your child, and then you could just spend hours not, and that kind of clashes.
I think that's the thing. I think that's where Fallout 3 works. Fallout 4 doesn't. Fallout 4, very, very loose plot. There's almost no motivation for you to go find your kid, to be honest. But Fallout 3, the people you need to talk to find your dad are at all the major locations that you can go, like all the major trading posts and stuff. Whereas Fallout 4, Diamond City, the bit what was Fenway Park. You go there, they're like, oh yeah, go find these guys, and then the plot kind of meanders off again.
Yeah.
But Fallout 3, it's like, oh, we saw your dad going towards this place.
It's a bit tighter, yeah.
Yeah, your dad went here next because he told us this.
Mass Effect kind of tackles that by not really like. It's sort of much more driven by the main story than the side quests than like a Bethesda game would be. And I think almost one of the problems with Andromeda was you're trying to take a formula that a lot of people like, partly because of the linearity, because it means you get to focus more on the story, and then try to add an openness that the game kind of struggles to support. So you end up with like, it's trying to do a theme of discovery, but the gameplay isn't quite able to deliver on that. So you've got this weird like dissonance in a lot of the game. But I think the individual elements work kind of well.
I know it's going to maybe go over both of your heads, but what it sounds like you're describing is you wish Andromeda was Star Trek Next Generation. The whole show is about discovery and you get all these little storylines about various things. But the game turned out to be Star Trek Discovery, which was kind of a cinematic spectacle in an established franchise.
Yeah, kind of, in a sense, but it tried to do both. So you do have
yeah.
the planets that are like, oh, let's explore this, let's spend some time learning about this. But then there's also this kind of crucial, we need to do this, there's Ket, we need to fight them and things. And that's the weird dissonance there, is that it doesn't quite carry off on either one completely. Because the exploration feels a bit capped, and then the story feels a bit shoehorned. So it's like, it doesn't quite work.
It mutes. It tries to give the best of both worlds, but ends up muting both of them.
Yeah, imagine Discovery, but every other episode, Burnham has to go and drive a vehicle to find a lost artifact. It could be an interesting story, but it doesn't tie into anything that's happening with the war. That kind of deal.
But the actual the individual elements, especially the gameplay, I think are really strong in this one. Like, Mass Effect's always struggled from, especially Mass Effect 1, oh boy, of the actual, gunplay, the sort of moment-to-moment gameplay you're doing, was quite weak, and the story was the thing that was kind of driving you through it. Like, the story, the characters, the world, all of that. Like, if Mass Effect 1 was a cover-based shooter, and that's it, it would not have the series. And personally, Jack, I don't know about you, but I think Mass Effect Andromeda might have the strongest gameplay in the series. It's broken, but the core is really solid.
What I would say, if you break it down into the simple elements of the gunplay and using your abilities and things, yes, it holds together really, really well. Everything, like when you're firing a gun, it feels weighty and significant, and everything kind of makes sense. It's intuitive and works well together. The powers are, again, intuitive, easy to use, easy to kind of get the grip of. So the actual physical, fundamental gameplay part of it, really good. Very well designed. That's what Frostbite is for. So it's no wonder they got that right.
Like, if you took out all the game and you just had, a box with infinite respawning enemies and the power set, that would be compelling.
Well, you know what?
Is what I'm sort of touching on.
What I thought about that is because I spent hundreds of hours in the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, and I thought as I was kind of finishing Andromeda that, well, I've had a lot of fun with the actual combat in this, and so the multiplayer is going to be great because it's just more of that, more combat, without being bogged down by any of the... In fact, even when you're doing multiplayer, your character has set powers, so you don't have to worry about using the best ones that you've got to offer, and
pressing start, going into the menu,
changing your sets and everything, which was another broken bit. But that's what I thought would be great about the multiplayer, and I've not played that much of it. I don't think I'm specifically bored by it or that I don't find it interesting. I just think I haven't really had time, so I haven't given it the best chance that it could have had.
I think I gave it a fair chance. And I think part of the problem was, one, jumping from a multiplayer that's got DLC to a multiplayer without DLC is always going to feel like a bit of a downstep because you've got less diversity in characters. But also, because of the movement system in the game, you got the dodge, the jump, all of that, it kind of makes all the characters feel a lot more similar.
Yeah, that's right, actually. Because in Mass Effect 3, you did have characters which were made to move quickly and others which were just tanks. And every single character that you had at the start of the multiplayer there, I think there was 20 of them, there's really not much to separate them out except for the power set. They all feel the same.
The diversity of Mass Effect 3's multiplayer, the reason why you could sort of play for so long was that you had, by the end of it, a huge amount of different skills and abilities. Playing as a Volus was very different from playing as a Geth Prime. It was different to playing as a Dragoon. By the way, guys, fun tip. If you do play Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, and you got 4 people total, have 1 Geth Prime and 3 Voluses. It's amazing. It's so good. They go up to, its knee. But the actual, gameplay I found easy, but it was enjoyable. It was, satisfying.
It
really
definitely was satisfying.
And part of that is the sound and art and all of that sold in.
It came together very well in that aspect,
Yeah. They had the game juice. But also, the driving was good. Again, another Frostbite thing is Frostbite. It's great with physics. I don't know about you, but just the simple thing of having a gear switch to go between, the sort of low gear where you can go up high things
Yeah.
and in a fast gear.
Yeah.
I'm a car
You've got
expert.
climb gear and fast gear.
Basically, you do though.
Yeah.
And that led to the feeling of quite a lot of skill when you're driving. Like it didn't feel like you just sort of point and go,
Yeah.
which driving tends to feel for me a fair bit. Is it very much felt like, you were planning ahead. You're like, okay, that ramp, is that enough? If I get the boost, I'll be able to jump off it. And then if I hit this, it just like, you had to think through the problem.
Yeah, I'd say the driving for me, for the most part, it's not something I thought about a huge amount, which is kind of a good thing because I spent hours and hours and hours exploring and didn't really feel like it was a chore. I felt like driving around was fun and it was engaging, and probably most importantly of all, it was intuitive. It did feel like I want to do this, therefore I know what to do to come around that problem. Get in the vehicle and you just start doing things, and yeah, it was fine. I think at the start of the game, I kind of remember wishing that it had a gun.
Oh, well, like the original Mako.
Yeah, I mean, just any kind of weapon on it, because otherwise there's a little Ket dropship, and you can spend like 10 times running them over. You knock them down, spin around, knock them down again, or you can get out and shoot them, which is tedious.
This is the thing. It did have a weapon. It was your bumper.
Yeah, yeah, I guess.
And that was very satisfying.
I think that giving it a weapon would have opened up a whole lot of other gameplay options. Like, for example, when you're chasing down a dragon thing, if you had a gun, you've got to drive and shoot. That would be exciting. Yeah. That would be really like a whole other plane of gameplay.
I think the reason why they didn't include that is more of like to try and make you get out. Because, as I said, it feels like a sort of empty map with a few sort of clusters of content.
Yeah.
And when you get to a cluster, it very much feels like you should get out.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
Like the placement of props and everything is almost there to like discourage you from getting through, and you can if you want to. It's not too hard, but like, the gameplay is very much like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Come on.
What you're supposed to be
I think also they probably want to avoid the Batmobile paradox from Arkham Knight, which was, look at the super powerful vehicle we've built. Why don't we just add a little bit more stuff where you have to use the vehicle? And then blink and the game is unbearably vehicle-based.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to a degree, I suppose, you do spend, I would say, most of your time in Mass Effect Andromeda in the Nomad. At least half of your time. What do you think, James? How long do you spend in the Nomad?
It just depends on how much time you spend exploring versus doing the story, basically.
Yeah, I suppose so.
But I would say maybe a third of your time?
A third, okay.
For me, anyway, especially like towards the end, I kind of started to rush the story just to try and get it over with. I was determined not to quit, and I just kind of wanted to push through.
It is bad, but I did kind of feel the same way when I was getting towards the end. When I got into the third act, basically, I was like, okay, I'm gonna put just more effort into the story to get it finished, which is not really what you want from a game.
Now, speaking of vehicles, how did you feel about the Tempest?
Good. I like the Tempest as a ship. It was easy to get around. Everyone kind of had their bits. There's not a whole lot to say. I guess
it's quite small.
It's a bit small. But I think that if there was more to it, I mean, I wouldn't know what to do with the space.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something quite controversial.
Okay.
I think the Tempest is cooler than the Normandy.
You get out of here right now.
That is controversial.
The Tempest's, I guess, silhouette, it's just general design. I love it so much. I would be wearing I would wear that shirt that's got the Andromeda thing of the Tempest. I would wear that merch a ton if Andromeda was anywhere close to Mass Effect 2.
I prefer the Normandy. I prefer the SR2. The first Normandy is a bit of a funny shape, but I like the kind of long nose of the second Normandy. I really, really, really like the Normandy.
When you first see Normandy SR2,
yeah,
in Mass Effect 2.
The buzz.
Um,
As the lights come on.
I remember yelling at my computer, "Oh, you sexy thing.
Yeah.
Hello there. Hello, sexy."
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like I don't like the Normandy.
Okay.
Like the Normandy is beautiful. I think I just like the sleekness of the Tempest.
See, the funny thing for me, though, is that the Tempest feels a bit blocky. It feels like it's like kind of clunkier. The Normandy is very kind of, it's curved and smooth. And the Tempest feels like it's a bit more of an 80s kind of ship. I need to look at a picture of it, actually. Let me refresh my
Hang
mind.
on. Well, that's actually, I have a comparison thing here of all of the different, like all the different Normandies and then the Tempest. One thing actually I really liked about the Tempest that they improved on from Inquisition and then Mass Effect 2 and 3 is the characters walked around.
Yeah, that's right. They move from place to place.
And it was a bit of a pain sometimes. You're trying to get around, you're like, oh, they're on this level. But it added a sense of cohesiveness.
Yeah.
Like, it made it feel like a space, you know? Especially all the little emails that were like,
Yeah.
you know, like, oh, stop stealing our food and all that. And also, I love the room in it that you get. It's very cool.
Well, speaking of emails and stuff, how do the core cast of characters compare to the original Mass Effect trilogy?
So, Jack, the companions.
Okay. So, I don't think any of them measure up, on average, to any of the companions in the
Oh no,
original
I mean
trilogy.
specifically, I want you to name them.
Oh, I have to name them. Okay, so here we go.
And for bonus points, give me a few lines about their personality as well. See how much you remember.
So, Cora, she was in line to be the Pathfinder after your original Pathfinder died, but isn't, and kind of has a chip on... See, this is one of the things I don't like about Cora, is that Cora, it feels like throughout the story she's supposed to be working out that chip on her shoulder, but never quite does.
She just kind of hates you.
In fairness, is it an understandable chip on her shoulder?
No, but the thing is that
Honestly,
it
is.
This is the thing with a lot of the characters. It's just very jarring because she'll be like, "Hey, Pathfinder, you know what? I'm behind you. I really am behind you. I think you're going to do well." God damn it! I wish I was Pathfinder. I'm like, for God's sake, just like, you know, within 2 lines of dialogue, she's being supportive and then just outright bitchy about you being the Pathfinder.
Yeah.
She's not, and it's weird. Like, maybe that was a deliberate character design for her, but it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't sit right, especially when you're kind of familiar with the typical video game BioWare, particularly sort of character that does kind of warm to you and generally you get used to. But I never got used to Cora.
So
Right,
who are
okay.
the others?
So then you've got Liam, who's another human. Liam, again, I couldn't really quite put my finger on exactly what Liam's
he
there
watches
for.
TV.
He has loads of like pop culture references. Like
Has a sofa.
every email he sends to you is like, it's got attachments which are like films or music which relates to what he was talking about, which is...
That's kind of cute.
Well, I mean, I think it would be cuter if you could see the attachments, but really what it's got is a
He's
description
much
of an
more
attachment.
obnoxious than that sounds. And it's weird to sort of like... A lot of the characters, when you describe them, they're like, yeah, they seem like a cool concept. But I guess the writing isn't quite good and like
Liam,
consistent enough to sell them,
with
especially for Liam.
I really struggled to find out what he was all about. You know, he was this guy who was kind of cocky, kind of funny, liked to crack a joke, but then would also have these moments of very deep openness, and then kind of laugh it off and be like, "What is happening? Why have you done this?"
I think he might have tried to. They might have tried to make him like the Garrus.
Oh, if that was the attempt, then it failed miserably.
Like Garrus in Mass Effect 1, not like the full-on Dirty Harry kind of like...
But Garrus in Mass Effect 1,
face.
he's very by the book, sometimes a bit sarcastic, has a wisecrack
yeah.
here and there, but is typically very by the book. And then as you kind of go through the story, starts to open up to you and things. Liam, it's like... In fact, no, I'll say this about all the characters, I think, thinking about them now, they don't have that kind of building and development. They just alternate, between what you would consider to be, when you first meet them, in Liam's case, the happy kind of cocksure wisecracker, And then as you get to know them, he opens up and becomes more deep with you and tells you how he's actually feeling. But with Liam, you just get them interspersed, and it's very strange.
And I think it's weird in that there are two characters who I genuinely would like to see return. I'm not going to say them because that would be a spoiler.
I've still got 4
for
more
the
to go
rest of
through,
it.
so that's
Yeah. And I think it's the fact that they don't change that much.
Yeah.
They just kind of support you throughout, and that helps establish the consistency.
Next is Vetra, who is my favourite of all of the companions. Vetra's a female Turian. Vetra's great. Vetra doesn't really suffer from that problem because I think Vetra does kind of develop. Vetra is very closed and very kind of formal with you to begin with, but then does open up as you go along. And I seriously regret not romancing Vetra. I'm going to romance someone else, who I'll get onto in a minute. But I think Vetra would have been the best option because I feel like Vetra's, out of all of them, the most interesting character because she does kind of have a history and a backstory that gets unfolded to you gradually, and it really does influence who she is as a character. So yeah, Vetra's solid. Vetra's great. Next up is PB, who's an Asari who's very kind of excited. I think that's bubbly, yeah, bubbly, but also
intense.
She's very intense. We'll go with that. And I think the whole point of her character is that she never wants to be tied down and always needs to feel like she's in absolute control of everything. As a character, cool. As a squad mate, that can get a bit jarring because just like with the other characters I mentioned before, there's more of a development as she goes along to say, yeah, I'm actually kind of okay with settling down with this crew for a little while and sticking with you guys. But then there's still always that undertone of I might just bail, and it's difficult to put much stock in a character like that.
So she's the Morrigan?
Kinda, but it doesn't feel like there's sort of a deeper reason. It's more just like, oh, today's a Tuesday, so I can't be here. I've got to go.
Yeah, that is exactly what it feels like.
It feels kind of arbitrary if she stays or goes.
She's just like, I will stick around today, but tomorrow I might be blown in a different direction, and you're just going to have to deal with that.
She's also like a scientist, I guess?
Yes, sort of, yeah. An archaeologist, maybe?
Yeah.
She's super into the Remnant.
She's an archaeologist in the same way that Indiana Jones is. That kind of like archaeologist.
That sounds really cool, but it's not.
Yeah. Okay, you got one more.
I've got 2 more.
You do,
James.
You do.
And the names are really... No, I'm going to get them. So there's a really old Krogan. I think he's actually the oldest Krogan you've ever met in the franchise.
Which is impressive for a Krogan.
Yeah, and his name is... Is it Drax?
It's Drac.
Drac!
With a K.
Drax is...
They didn't want to do Rex.
Yeah, they went Drac. Yeah,
his name is Nakmor Drac.
Nakmor Drac, yeah, because he's Clan Nakmor. Okay, so he's super old, and he's just a kind of a cranky Krogan. I think my problem with Drac was that we've kind of seen it all before. Man, that was a tough fight. And he's like, I've had tougher. One time a monster ripped out all my ribs. What do you think of that? And it's like, okay.
One time a monster performed open heart surgery on me.
Yeah.
So, he's a good character, but it would have helped if we hadn't spent so many hours on Tachanka.
Yeah. He's basically Rex.
He's got like a granddaughter who's like the only one who can get some sense in him, and that is a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah, that's right. His granddaughter is on the Nexus and is on sort of the council that they have there, and so you've got a few quests which relate to the two of them.
So it's this weird thing of like this grumpy guy who takes no shit, and then
he's
it's
got
sort of like
spot,
immediately goes, okay, sure, and that is interesting.
Yeah, that
not
is nice.
Fully developed. One more character.
One more is Jaril, Jalolor.
Just Jarl.
It was Jarl. Jarl. Jarl reminds me quite a lot of Jarvik from Mass Effect 3. He was a DLC character.
I didn't get the launch day DLC, so I missed out on that character.
Well, basically, he's an Angara, so he's the new species. So there's kind of a lot that you have to almost get used to with him. There's a bit of ground that you've got to cover before you start to understand what he's like. I think Jarl kind of comes across, especially among the Angara, as a bit of a troublemaker, someone who's a bit of a free spirit.
Weird. All right.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I had a completely different interpretation of the character.
No,
but
the
yeah, no, continue.
what's she called? The matriarch kind of lady from the Angara is always like, that Jarl always getting himself into trouble and stuff, and he's like,
Weird. All right, yeah, because
maybe he had a different Jarl.
One of the problems is the sort of inconsistency in the writing.
Yeah.
Can lead to this.
Yeah.
But the Jarl that sort of when I think of Jarl, I basically think Space Mufasa,
No.
but like open with his feelings.
Not at all. I don't get that at all.
Especially because when you go to his home planet with him and he's like introducing you to the family, I really got the sense that he was kind of like the head of the household, even though he wasn't. Like he was the one trying to manage everything and like almost like a really strong family guy. And it is insane that you can't romance him. I think you might actually be able to now.
What I got from meeting his family is that he's like the oldest son kind of a deal. So he's stepping up and he's taking responsibility, but he's still a bit of a wild card. He's still got a bit of adventure in him, that kind of
So
idea.
we have like basically opposite interpretations.
Yeah, that's so weird.
That's not great.
Anyway, yeah, those are the companions. I've been through them all
and
now.
just quick, I'm not going to make you do a quiz for the rest of them, but then there's Callow the pilot, who I liked him. He's kind of like a nerdy. They clearly weren't trying to do Joker again, which I really appreciate, because you can't do Joker again. So having like a kind of nerdy character, and he talked a lot about how hard it was to build the Tempest and how people died making it, and it was interesting. And then you have Gil,
yeah, Renly Baratheon,
who. Then you have Suvi, who's basically their personality is Catholic and too much makeup.
Oh no, you're very harsh on Suvi.
Which one's voiced by Natalie Dormer?
Actually, that's your doctor, an Asari doctor on the ship.
I just want to say, I was looking through the voice acting. You got Camille Nanjiani, who's one of my favourite comedians. He voices the Solarian on the Nexus.
Yeah, he's the boss of the Nexus, basically. Yeah, he's pretty great.
Love him. Natalie Dormer, you've got some high-class voice acting.
You sure do, yeah. I remember reading about it.
It does make sense.
Also, Sam is voiced by a
such a
lady,
big fan.
so that's interesting.
Weird. All right. Actually, we are definitely going to touch on that. We're running like slightly over, but this is the last topic, so we are definitely getting into Sam. And then you got Lexi, the doctor.
Yeah.
Who's basically like just takes on the sort of like team mum kind of vibe.
In a way, it's a bit like Dr. Chakwas, but a bit kind of, I don't want to say more commanding, more mothering than Dr. Chakwas.
More stern.
Yes, more
definitely.
stern.
So I'm literally reading the Mass Effect wiki while doing this. Apparently she has a crush on Drac.
I don't think so. I think she's interested in Drac because he's the oldest being that she's ever encountered, but...
Well, no, it straight up says in the wiki, like,
she has a
bit of a crush on Drac.
Okay,
it doesn't
fair enough.
give any lines about that, but fair enough, I'll accept that. So, then you have the one character who's with you through thick and thick. Sam.
So Sam is basically an AI. Sam is an AI that has its home on the Nexus, not the Nexus, on the human colony ship, but is also in your head.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
It's like cloud computing, kind of. The same way how like Edie is in the ship.
Yes.
And is in the robot.
Now imagine Edie was in your head as well as in the ship.
And imagine the only thing Edie ever did was say, "Don't do that fun thing. Don't."
Yeah.
It was kind of an unfortunate decision. Is whenever you step out onto a planet that you haven't properly colonized, Sam is the one saying, "You're gonna die there, buddy." So in my mind, Sam was the annoying bastard who just kept nagging me.
I didn't get so much of that from Sam. I just kind of got a too much information kind of attitude where I'm walking along and Sam is like, "There's a base nearby, by the way." I'm like, I don't really care, Sam, or that kind of thing. But I think that would have been okay in and of itself, except that Sam then became very integral to the plot. The Ket tried to steal Sam because they wanted to use Sam's power to find the Meridian or something, and it was all it's all about Sam now. And like, well, I don't really care that much about Sam. Sam just tells me what's cool in this area, I don't really...
It was very funny that, I found it very funny that Sam vanishes. And Sam's meant to be the way you, interface with all this ancient tech and all of that. So Sam vanishes, and I'm just like, thank Christ! Oh my God, keep him, please! Christ, yeah. And then you really struggle. You almost die somehow trying to open this door. And it's a decent moment in the game.
Yeah, a cutscene. Yeah,
and then it goes into gameplay. You walk up to the next door and you just open it with the same animation as always.
Just a complete oversight by the writers there that was going to happen.
It just undercuts the entire moment so well. It just makes him look like he was whining. Why did the other rider have a Sam?
I have
no
idea.
Why does anyone have a Sam implant? If only Alec is the one who gets the deeper access.
Maybe he just plugged them into his children because he was like,
if you sign up, does the janitor have a Sam implant? How far does this go? I would be kind of scared if a company was like, you can join us, but we're going to give you an implant, and it's not going to do anything other than let you talk to this voice in your head that it might monitor your everything, but
it will.
That's fine. And also, if the leader wills it, we can permanently entangle it into your brain and make it a part of who you are. Also, we have dental.
Yeah. Let's move on from Sam. Sam is an interesting one.
Shall I ask my questions?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to round it off.
How badly did Andromeda suffer from the Mass Effect hype?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people would have gone into it expecting one thing based on the previous franchise and then not getting that, which would have hurt it for sure. But I suppose also we were kind of reminiscing, there's no Volus, there's no Quarian, so it's like saying it's Mass Effect still, sure, but it's not that much Mass Effect. You've still got Asari and Turian and Krogan, but all the kind of attitudes were a little bit different and things.
I think the reason is more along the lines of, if Mass Effect Andromeda was a new IP, we wouldn't have remembered it. We wouldn't still be talking about it.
I suppose, yeah.
In the same way that the prequels, if the Star Wars, not that Andromeda's as bad as the prequels, but if the prequels weren't Star Wars, no one would talk about.
Yeah, they would have just been some.
They'd just be forgotten.
Yeah, some movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think in a way it almost saved Andromeda a bit, as well as killing it.
Okay, so my other question is, 2017 was a very good year for games, and I'm gonna read a lot of game titles out now. In terms of AAA releases, 2017 saw everything from Resident Evil 7 to Sniper Elite 4 to Nier Automata, and of course the Switch coming out, Persona 5, Horizon Zero Dawn, Walking Dead Season 3 came out, Outlast 2. I could go on, and that's just the AAA titles. Because 2017 was a fantastic year for indie darlings. You got Sexy Brutal and Night in the Woods, Urban Empire, Star Trek Bridge Crew for the VR stuff. All these fantastic games. So my other question is, was 2017 just a really bad year to bring out a mediocre game? Because if I just find where the period Mass Effect itself came in, so Mass Effect came out on the 21st of March. 5 days before that, you got the amazing indie darling Kona came out, as well as Nier Automata. On the 7th of March, you had Nier Automata for the PlayStation, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands. Zelda had come out on the 3rd of March.
Okay, so I think for the most part, No, I don't think it would have been any better any other year because the same group of people were always going to get it and play it. And even in this discussion that we've had today, the only game that we've actually compared it to in that period of time was Breath of the Wild, and that was only in passing. We compared it to the original trilogy, which people are always going to do, and we compared it to Fallout and some other stuff. But I think in terms of games that year, I don't think everyone ever really does do all that much measuring up over that kind of period of time with a large number of games.
The average person won't play all of them.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I'm only just playing Breath of the Wild because I didn't have a Nintendo system and I don't have a PlayStation. So I can't play a lot of that stuff. But there were definitely, I think, at the initial time, there was kind of an expectation of, is it going to continue that trend of surprisingly good open world RPGs?
And I think, because if we jump back to February of last year, so about a month, like just under a few days, like Night in the Woods came out literally a month before Andromeda. But like the closest comparison I'd say in terms of gameplay and kind of content would be Horizon Zero Dawn. And that came out in February, and that has swept to critical acclaim.
Yeah, I still can't see that Andromeda would have, like, say for example, Horizon Zero Dawn wasn't released at that time. I don't think it would have been any better or worse for Andromeda. I think that really, Andromeda is what it is, and regardless of what's kind of being released around it or what the current kind of games market looks like, it was still a sort of a slightly mediocre follow-up to a franchise, and I think that's always how it's kind of going to be seen.
Yeah, I think it almost it helped hide a few bits because there isn't that much to the game. Like there is there are side quests, but they're not very engaging, and so it did kind of the fact that everyone sort of moved on quite quickly for it might have helped it. Especially at the game press,
Yeah, especially because I think it really did get saved because it came out, as I said, 21st of March, 4th of April. Persona 5 comes out. That was the big RPG of April, and then later on you got Sexy Brutal and Yooka-Laylee for the kind of indie crowd. So yeah, I think James was right. I think there were games that came soon enough after Andromeda to kind of take people's minds away from Andromeda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think though that having it coming out in that wave definitely hurt sales.
Definitely, yeah.
Especially after reviews hit. So we might potentially, if none of them else released, we might have seen Andromeda 2. I don't think that's likely, but that or DLC would have been more likely.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, if it hadn't been such a good year for games, maybe we would have bought more copies. But I think that would really be if you're comparing it in terms of actual gameplay that you're comparing, I don't think it would have had much of an effect. But if it was purely a financial thing, yeah, maybe we would have got that DLC with the Quarians and the Volus and stuff.
And we can basically confirm at this point, Mass Effect is kind of a dead series now. BioWare is pushing its money into Anthem, which is going to be this big online multiplayer exploration action RPG. That's BioWare's next big project. We might get another Dragon Age game in the next few years.
Yep, I think that's in the works, or it's being talked about.
It'll probably be in pre-production if they're sort of wrapping up Anthem.
I've got one more statement about Andromeda. And one of the things I didn't like. So, the side quest. As a diversion, to get you out of the vehicle, to get you exploring a bit, yeah, fine. But none of them, I don't think any of them, had any actual value. I remember one in particular that was very galling, was you've traced people across the galaxy because this woman has devised a virus that can kill Angara, maybe? I think that's what it does. And you've followed her across the galaxy, you've gone from waypoint to waypoint, and you've finally found her where she's been captured by the Ket. And one of them has got a gun to her and is holding this virus. And you have to make a choice between saving the Doctor and killing the Ket and not letting the virus get out. And my playthrough, I saved the Doctor and the Ket escaped, and I'm seeing his ship sailing away. I'm like, well, That is going to be something that's going to come back to bite me. And it never did. Like, not even close. It was never brought up again, ever again. And that is like such a game changer. They've got this virus which they can synthesize to kill an entire species. Nope, just doesn't have any bearing on the game at all. And that happened time and time again in the side quests. There were some side quests where a character would say, do you know what you've just done? You've ruined everything. And I'm like, oh shit, I did, didn't I? So I think about it some more. I'm like, no, this is never going to actually mean anything in terms of gameplay or plot. Like,
I very quickly, I don't know if I was like subconsciously latching onto the fact that I didn't, I knew none of it mattered, but I very quickly got quite nihilist and like, oh, what's that, Jarl? It's your brother? All right, bang,
Murder him,
he was a terrorist. Sorry, I'm just sort of like going through like, I don't care, and it kind of, I think that's why I liked Ryder's character, is you can play it as this really fed up, like, I'm done with this. I'm so done with this. So every situation is just.
Is there any sort of renegade paladin system?
no.
Not at all.
It's like Inquisition, but I don't think it had the this person liked you, this person didn't like you.
Really doesn't have any effect. A lot of the times it's just the way you end a conversation. You can do it politely, you can do it like as a cocksure kind of guy, or you can just do it rudely and it doesn't have any effect on what happens.
It was the Fallout 4 thing, basically.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just a sarcastic flirt and it was great.
James's rider has 27 sexual harassment suits waiting for him on the Nexus.
From the Tempest alone, which has a crew of 6, so...
As much as we've talked about how we didn't like the game, if they said Mass Effect Andromeda 2 was coming out, I would be interested.
Oh, me too, absolutely.
Because there's a real potential in the stuff they've shown, and that's why it's so interesting, is there is this inconsistency, partly due to the fact that they had to rush it so much. So I don't think the game really deserved what it got.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And even if they said oh, we're gonna just do Mass Effect Andromeda again, but we're gonna start again, I would be down. I would play, and I'm as much as I don't want to play Anthem, still interested in BioWare.
Yeah. I wouldn't be that interested if they said they were going to make Mass Effect Andromeda again, because I think that's a big cop-out, because I paid, 40 quid for that game?
Oh yeah, no, they'd have to give it to free.
If you
to
give it to me
everyone
for
who
free,
made it.
I'm down.
Yeah.
But if you're doing this to say, yeah, we kind of messed up, but we're going to make another full-price game for you to enjoy, I'd be like, no, I sod that. I've given you my money. You disappointed me, and so I'm not going to buy it.
I'm gonna go buy 20 indie darlings for the amount of money.
Exactly. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. In general, I don't have bad feelings towards it. Just slight disappointment. It's a bit mediocre. Doesn't really quite satisfy me. Yeah.
And that's kind of the problem. Is at the end of the day, if it was a complete failure, it wouldn't have been as interesting, and we wouldn't have got an hour and 20 minutes out of it. And on that note, it's goodbye from me.
Remember to follow us on social media. We are Silver Crow Media, all one word, on YouTube and Tumblr. We are at Silver Crow Inc. on Twitter. We're Silver Crow Media on Twitch, and we stream weekly. We do D&D. And yeah, let us know what you want to hear us talk about on I Digress, which will be our miscellaneous. This topic doesn't really fit into any of our other podcast. Watch out for On a Roll, which is our D&D podcast, our as yet unnamed gaming podcast, Wasted Potential, where Jack plays a drunk agony aunt for an hour alongside the wonderful Ellie, and yeah, just watch out for any future Silver Crow Media projects, and tell your friends about us.
Yeah. Thanks and bye.